Morning, Friday afternoon, Friday night. How you doing? How you feeling? Um, see what we got real quick.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Top 5 Records video. Today is a fascinating day because we get a new Prince album. Well, what does it mean? Because Prince sadly passed away.
So we're gonna sit here and do this real quick. Somebody just posted this thing up. I'll get this thing set up. We're gonna get this thing set up. We're gonna about to do this real quick. Getting this thing all set up. I don't know what that means, so we're gonna find out. Ask him what that means. Live. I had to send out all the notifications, letting people know that I am on live. And if you want to chat, feel free. Feel free to hit the likes. Please hit that poll question if you want to. It's simple because I heard about the Beyonce 20-year B Day and $160 for the vinyl deluxe. Are you up with it? Are you not? What you got? We're talking about Beyonce. Looks like they desperate for some cash. Seems to be the thing that's going on. So what's your story? Hope you're doing all right in this weekend. Depends on where you are in the world. Hope how you're good and down. Would have been Michael Jackson's 68th birthday tomorrow. Definitely will be enjoying it. As a matter of fact, today I was listening to Earth song. It felt some kind of right. You definitely feel the aura. Gonna watch the movie as I usually do every Saturday. So yeah, one of those things. But anyway, the question is about Beyonce. Yeah, she's got this 20th anniversary record out. And do they need money? Hmm. Sounds like desperate measures for call for drastic actions. I don't know. You tell me. So You never know what's going on. Things ain't always what they appear to be. But if anybody gonna spend that kind of money on a 20-year record, that record better be memorable. I don't know. I don't even think that Thriller had like four. That might understand. Beyonce doesn't have four albums combined that's worth that. You know, I mean, that's what's up. But desperate measures call for desperate actions, I guess. So I don't know. We are coming to you live today. There's a lot going on. A lot has happened this week. Uh, Samuel Monroe Jr., who was in Minister Society, passed. So what's happening? How you doing? So rest in peace to him. It was a pretty heavy week. Dolly Parton, rest in peace. There's a lot of people that have been lost lately, and we want to take the time to remember them. Also, with everything that's going on in the world, all the craziness and all of the, just wishing everybody the best out there. So, if you got something you want to say, feel free. Come on through. I'll be here for a minute and appreciate it when it comes through. Appreciate all the support. And again, we are coming to you live today. Football will be coming back. NFL will be starting. If you're happy about that, let me know. You tired about this NBA mess, let me know. And how you feel about baseball, let me know. How's your summer been? Let me know. Plans that you're looking forward to next year. What's happening? Not much. Because I'm a realist. He stunk in Dallas. He started to fade his last 2 years in Golden State, and he looked lost in Dallas. Uh, Cooper Cup, he's there to knock down threes. I know Luka being away and Kyrie not there, but he just, it's past the pull date. Yeah, he'll have some moments, but is that a championship team with him and Giannis and Bam? I mean, really? Think about it. You got to be honest about that. You got to be real about that. I am. They need a decent guard. You know, um, uh, they'll win some games, and they'll be a tough out. They play some defense, but winning chips, being a contender, you that would be the biggest upset if they come out the East. That would be because they're not that team. I know people were riding on Philadelphia, and I don't think the Knicks are gonna be no pushover. Mm-mm. I just think that no. And listen. I did Clay. Clay's one of my favorite players the last 25 years. FY for your info, because to me, um, could have very well been the Scottie Pippen of his generation. Well, this is the thing. Um, LeBron's got to play at a high level, and Joel Embiid's got to play at a, you know, they all got to match, and that's gonna be the thing. And then Jalen Brown, you got to wonder, like, okay, will he, you know, it just got lots got to work, you know, a lot's got to work. Can it work? It could. Should it work? It should. What's happening? How you doing? What's happening? How you doing? Great to see everybody coming through. Thank you. Well, you know what? He's mad because they're not featured on the opening night. So, hey, I don't have no doggy in the race in the East because, I mean, I'm a Heat fan, but I'm not thinking we're going to come out of there. I really don't. I think that New York's got a good chance. The Pacers could be a problem. I think a lot of people forget about, and don't sleep on Detroit. Cade Cunningham ever gets the right sidekick, watch out. Boston might shock somebody if they get the pieces right, but Jason Tatum got to stay healthy, you know. But I don't know. But it doesn't matter because the best teams are in the West, okay? It just so happened that last year that When Yamba they got out coached, they got out hustle, they got out played. If he does a mess like that, if that doesn't bury him for what happened last year, then he'll have a heck of a career. If that doesn't bury him, I still think them and OKC are the best teams in the NBA. New York played great, and nothing will take nothing from Jalen Brunson because Jalen Brunson, what he accomplished last year, that's the equivalent of 10 years worth of work. And if he does it again, he'll be the GOAT Nick. And then we'll have to start discussing him as amongst the top 25 or so players ever if he wins another chip. I kid you not. But I don't think they can sneak nobody like they did last year. Everything just landed. Somebody's got to break the chain and go and repeat, you know. So we'll see. But I'm not really, again, NBA is a long way. I hear you about the best team in the West. The reason why I say that though, ask yourself a question though. Shea's been a back-to-back MVP. When Yamba looks like he gonna be running things, there is nobody in the East that you look at and think to yourself, the best player is over in the East. So for starters, two, OKC's a pretty stacked team. Yeah. I give you all that about the Pacers, but they're a pretty stacked team. And they just lost game 7 to the Spurs in the Western Conference Finals. And they have been, and Shea's been right there with Jokic. All the best. When you think about best players, you tend to think best teams. Do you really see a lot of the same caliber of teams in the East as you do in the West? There's a reason why LeBron hightailed it over back to the East. I'm just saying. I know they were up. And maybe if they win, maybe we look at it differently, but we don't. Shea sealed the deal, and Shea got multiple league MVPs and scoring tight guys, and we know how Jokic is heralded and Wanyamba. Who you got like that in the East that you go, oh, that's the dude, you know? You got a shot. I'm not gonna rule that out. And you know what? If Halliburton was to come back and win it all, I wouldn't have no problem with it at all. I just don't think it's gonna happen, but I wouldn't have no problem with it though. I don't think LeBron represents the whole era because you're forgetting about Steph Curry. And there wasn't nothing soft about Steph or forget about Kawhi Leonard. The thing that LeBron did is that he tagged up with all these other situations and then, you know, but it shows you how overrated he is, why he can't be the number one, two, or three best player because what happened? He ain't dominated the era like that. Steph Curry has beaten him more times. He hasn't dominated his era. He hasn't been the best player in the league in over a decade. So therefore, all this talk. Kind of after the Knicks, they may start doing like they did in baseball with the Cubs and the White Sox and the Red Sox. You never know. Cleveland is still holding that they'll get one to sneak in. We don't know. They got a chance. They got a chance. But they were so pathetic last year. And I know Halliburton's a big part, but they couldn't be that horrible. They sucked last year. Um, you know. I think that the parity of the league is what's why everybody's got a chance because everybody shoots threes. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about that mess too. But I'm not. I'm not. No, you forgot to play before the Malice in the Palace. That Tayshaun Prince block at the rim. That's the one that took his best shot away. If he could dunk that ball or make it with a left hand scoop, and they went, that changed the momentum because that was the play that led the Pistons to beating the Lakers. That one play changed the whole dynamic. That one right there. On paper, the Pacers were more talented, but reality, the Pistons had their heart. And I just don't, to be honest with you, this might be a hot take, it might not be. I just think that he gets a little bit overrated. I think the horn's been blown a little bit. One of the best shooters I ever seen, clutch play. But beyond that, what else did he really do? Because he never really seemed to me like he could seal the deal. Choked that job against Chicago in the last 5 minutes in '98. Could not rebound the Bulls. Had that butt on the ropes. Then you got the finals against the Lakers. Got to that thing with Kobe. 6 games. Shaq aside, they had a chance. And then you go against Detroit and that. I think she's very talented, but that doesn't mean that you're bringing it home. It's like a great athlete. Just because you're talented doesn't mean you bring it home. You know, it's not about her. It's about the fact that songs don't really hold your interest. That thing. You know, you can come up with any style of music you want, but if you don't hold the attention span is just not happening. You know, people want her to be the love child of Michael and Whitney, and it ain't happening. It ain't happening for a reason. Yeah, I'm not gonna argue with you because everybody's entitled to the opinion. You know, I like him for what he did. He was definitely for theatrics. I like what he did, but at the same time, I just don't think he had the tangibles to be in a winning on that level. I just don't. He had a great chance in '98. I think '98 was his best chance. I don't think it's about an age thing. I think it's about how you listen to stuff. I think people always use this thing because the young Beyonce ain't no spring chicken no more. She's in her 40s and plus she's been around 30 years. So it's not exactly like we talking about Ariana Grande, or we talking about Ray, or we talking about even Rihanna, or we're talking about Gaga, or somebody that's been around 15, 20 years. I'm talking about somebody that's been around since the 90s. You in case you forget, Beyonce been around since cassettes was popping in the streets and CD singles was. Well, I'm not really with all that. He fought him, and what did it mean? I mean, really, you know, I respect his skills. Like I said, he could shoot. Well, he did, but he wasn't that dude. He needed somebody on that team that could kind of offset, and that's the problem. He was not that dude. He was legitimately good. He was even very good at times. Wasn't that dude. And I think they missed a mark, you know. Because they're offshoots of us, and it's too dumb to understand that they are, the slave trade is slave trade, and when you start to think you're better than somebody, that's what happens. People look like us, act like us, talk like us, but act like they not us. Go make it make some sense. I don't think he needed to play with those guys. I think he needed a legit. Mark Jackson was old when he got him, and Chris Mullins was old, but they was legit. I think what hurt them is that they couldn't rebound. They lost that game in '98 because they didn't hit the boards. They were about 5 points to 5 minutes ago in Chicago Stadium, and they could not get the boards. You know, and that was the reality. Then when they lost to the Lakers, as great as Shaq was, they were evenly tipped the other way. Austin Crozier, I remember that very well. You ain't talking to somebody who don't remember, because I remember Jalen Rose all that very well. Their problem was not finishing up, you see. And so that's the problem. Yeah. I ain't with all that. I'm gonna tell you like this. A lot of people would rather fight amongst themselves than to acknowledge what the real problem is. And when you start talking about your own kind, you start saying that um, you're gonna have shortcomings when you don't see what's right there in front of you. You know, and I think that's why people try to get into this conflicted. They get into this conflicted mess. That's what they do. He was like one of those guys who I want to say was a probably a better soccer player that turned into a basketball player. His rhythm was only good for pacing, but he didn't really enhance nowhere. Yeah, it happens. It happens. Hey, maybe if he'd have been more like Detlef Shrimp, who knows? It happens though. He had a little pace to him. You had Rick Smits. I just think that the problem with them is they didn't have a spark plug. They had Travis Best and Jalen and Rick. They didn't have that spark plug dude that could have really paced them to get into another level. That's the thing I think that they missed with that team. Let me put it to you like this in English. If you have Tyrese Halliburton style with what you had with that Pacer team back then, you win a ring. I don't know which year you win, but you win a ring. And you go to multiple finals. I'm gonna say it like that. Because I will give Tyrese Halliburton that. They just again, they missed that kind of dude with Reggie, and that could have ran them. I do. I believe that. I remember. You know. So thanks for everybody that's coming on so far. Appreciate it. Yeah. Which team? What you mean by which team? I don't think Jermaine O'Neal got better with time, and he definitely looked good. He was gonna be more pivotal than what Rick Smits was doing because Smits was pretty much a 17, 18 points. Just like a lot of cats, you see when you listen to certain things he says, he has a very compelling cases on scenarios. He has very strong thought out process. It depends on what we're talking about though. Oh, Hadley wins with they would have been more better suited with the Jermaine O'Neal era. And I think Hadley's style would have been better than Mark Jackson's. Mark Jackson was more fundamental, but Hadley's style. Most people were cooked going against Shaq. Most. Let me tell you something. Peak prime Shaq is as great as any player I've ever seen. Okay? And people need to stop acting like that you got just because you played 20 years. We go by your peak and your prime. We go by what is the best version of you. The best version of Shaq is as great as anybody. That includes Jordan, that includes Wilt, that includes Russell, Kareem, whoever you want to mention. His peak and his prime is as great as anybody. Because unless you could do like a Magic Johnson and do multiple positions, ain't too many people seeing what Shaquille O'Neal was doing. I'm just gonna keep it 100 because I think the disrespect is outrageous. Well, not only that, but he was a 17-point scorer and he was basically a double double, which was a very admirable. I think he was what I call a high second tier center, very low one, high second. When you go against somebody like Shaq, you got to be a 1A. And even then, is what Dikembe was with defensive player of the year and all that. There was nothing to stop Shaq. But that's not why the Pacers lost that series, though. Because we can cancel that out, but they didn't finish. And Kobe exposed finishing. And Reggie should have been more prepared for that. So, to me, they played the series like they were going through the motions. They didn't play like they came to win. That's how I saw it. When you play against certain teams, you got to finish that butt off, or they gonna finish it off for you. You know. And the Pacers should have had more runs too, especially when Larry Bird was their coach. Rick Carlisle did a really good job, but I thought Bird had them right where they were supposed to be. They stepped up their game for Bird, whereas Rick Carlisle, they regressed by a step. He did turn out to be a very good coach, but and Rick Carlisle definitely knows how to coach. But I just thought with Bird, they seemed like okay, we're going to the finals, we're on the door. They just seemed to me like a one step ahead. I feel the same way. She ain't put out nothing that I would go and say, hey, that I'm gonna want to hear this. Not like that. No. The hype is bigger than it's hyped. You know. Yeah, the Bird era is when I thought they were played their best, if you want my honest opinion. I thought they played no better than the Bird got the best out of them. You know. That's my favorite era of the Pacers, if you must know. You know. Please continue to hit that like, hit that subscribe if you want to, and hit this poll question. Or the Beyonce poll is good, 83. This is the 20th anniversary of her B-Day album. It's not a box set, but it is going to be a 4 vinyl plus some remixes plus that Dunk song that she did. And it's 20th anniversary of her second solo record. Oh, yeah, she's got enough to fill a box set. She's got, if you put her stuff together, if you include the Destiny's Child, she's got enough for people who want to do that. But this is about the second album. No, they're not aging as well because most people only use them for like frisbees. That's kind of how it goes. Put this thing real quick. You know, kind of her stands then kind of cooled off a little bit too. They used to be crazier. They used to come after you at all shapes of the yeah, yeah, and a lot of that stuff is tied in what she did with Jay Z too. So, but they're a long way from that right now, though. A long way from that. People that moved on, and it's kind of showing too. It is business. It is. Um, Newsflash for you. She benefited from in part of that, but if you're talking in black world, you're right. If you're talking in the pop world, you're wrong because you forgot about a person named Britney Spears. Beyonce was not bigger than Britney. Till Britney started to fall off, Beyonce got bigger. She was not bigger than Britney Spears. Not at that time. She was coming, but she wasn't bigger. And we're talking in the pop world, she did come and pass Christina Aguilera. But then Katy Perry started to emerge, Taylor Swift emerged, and then also you got Lady Gaga. So somewhere in, and then Rihanna comes along. But if I'm going by pop standard, she wasn't seeing Britney at first. Yep. Well, the industry ran her off. That's what that was about. They ran her off. And I forgot about Jennifer Lopez for the J Lo's come after me because Beyonce jacked her style. You know, and Marie had a hit for about 3 weeks. She gave Beyonce, and don't forget about Ashanti for a mini minute. For a mini minute, but Britney was bigger though. If we're going by that particular time, that's what we're going by. See, it all depends on what era we're going by. The industry didn't want them to last though. You know, it ain't just always about what you want. Alicia stayed hot to about '09. To that no one crap came out. She actually had a good run. It's just that her songs fell flat and she went flat. She didn't really. She just kind of fell. Britney's thing was self destruct, but it wasn't personal. Shantae ran out of hits, and the whole thing with Murder Inc. and all that. So I think that the industry wore them down. I think Britney was ran raggedy, Leah unalived, and then Ashante just kind of ran out, like she was gonna be kind of limited anyway because she was doing that Grease thing with Ja Rule. So when that thing kind of dried up and she did, she wrote and did some stuff, but can't take it lightly because you can come and go. You really can. Industry is a very funny business. You're gonna see a lot of acts that like, and I forgot about Katy Perry because Katy Perry was big for a moment. You know, well, she had the right team, you know, and she definitely had the drive and the focus. You got to have the right team behind you. And you got to, put the work in. That's what she did more than anything, and she had the right people that were pushing her, and she fed off of it. Can't say she didn't crash out because you just see the triumphs in terms of what the artistry. You don't get to see the behind the scenes when they putting the work in. So when people say crash out, you talking about OD or you talking about, but she toured, she did what she set out to do. So, she hit at the right time, had the right, you know, let's see what we got. Oh, she crashed out in private because Solange went upside Jay-Z's head in that elevator and she did crash out, you know. But that's a whole nother video. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Well, if you watched Dreamgirls, she had that big ballad where she was trying to sing and Jennifer Hudson still got the Oscar. They tried hard. They pushed all these Grammys, they pushed all these awards, they pushed Prince to acknowledge her, Michael Jackson to acknowledge her, all that, and it just ain't really. Britney had a great Look, she almost got 10 years out of it, if you think about it. Now, straight up, her peak was '08 to 93, '03, 98 to '03. But factor in that she had that, up until '07. She almost got a decade out of it, you know. She's made it farther than she probably would have, you know. But she got pretty far though. She got pretty far. I'll give her credit where credit is due. They do. They do. And Michael too. Don't act like they don't try to put it there. They do. Because look at all them awards she's gotten. She's the most awarded artist ever. Let that sink in at the Grammys. Jay Z cries and she gets Best Album of the Year. Think about it. I can't make this mess up. Shh. She got more Grammys than Michael, Whitney, and Prince put together. Let that sink in. And Marvin Gaye. Let that sink in. I ain't stutter. That's the most ridiculous and embarrassing one because aside from his moves, there's nothing else he's got. His songs suck. His vocals is under reach, and yeah, they like well, they got to pay. That's the industry. They pay people to lie. Like, and that's not just in sports. It's in. I mean, that's not just in music. It's in sports too. Because I just got through watching Allen Iverson say that LeBron James the best player in the world and all this and this. I'm like, yeah, okay. That's not part of what the whole thing is. What about his singing? What about his songs? You know. See, when you say that right, go to somebody down the street and say, look, I'll give you $100 if you can name me 10 Chris Brown songs off the top that are classics. See what kind of reaction you get. See, that's just the reality that we get. And when we start talking about what you got as far as songs that are, he doesn't have but so much. He can't sing as far as I'm concerned. I'll take Tevin Campbell over him right now and raise you. Shoot, I'll take Usher over him as a singer. If Chris Brown could really blow, he would be a lot more happening than he is. I don't think he was a better singer than Trey Songz, if you want my opinion. Or Neo for that matter. Got over at the right time. Industry. I'm not big on Breezy. I like about a handful of his songs, and I'm good. Kelly Rowland. He was the first non Motown act. The first one to do a non Motown song at Billie Jean. Yep. And to be honest with you, if you ever watched the old school movies Breaking, which I was watching Breaking 2 the other night with Turbo and Boogaloo, which came out in '84, that's where C Breezy got a lot of his moves from. Pop locking and that's all they did back, get the cardboard out and lock and pop. This stuff ain't nothing new. So he doesn't do electrophonic music to even offset that. That's the sad part. Because then maybe I'd understand if he had electronic groove going. Well, what Michael Jackson did, Michael Jackson took from Bob Fosse, Jackie Wilson, James Brown, Fred Astaire. But what Michael Jackson did though is that he put structure and style to it. He had to put he also had songs. He lived it through the music. Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. But where's his music going? That is going places where people are going, okay, you're singing this song, you got this song that's, very euphoric. Where is that at? Because I don't hear it. I don't hear it. And he don't either, if he's honest with himself. Mm. The industry was going to force Chris Brown. I was like, yep. Well, yes and no. Yes and no. I don't know if they still put movies and stuff on him. I don't know if it's not quite the same. She's got better talent than he does. I can't even say that, but they definitely pushing him. But I can't say, you know, that's how I feel about the generic vocals and you know. Oh, they wanted him to be big, just like they want Drake to be big. They pushing agendas. Yeah, but you're talking about something that's part of him, but you're not saying anything about the songs. You're not saying anything about his vocals. You're not saying anything about his has he enhanced his career since he came out 20 years ago. See, that should be the criteria. See, I can sit here and tell you that when Michael Jackson was a kid, I want you back, I'll be there, love you, save ABC number one. Then who's loving you and all that, and got to be there and all that. And then he fast forward to Off the Wall Thriller, etc. And then We Are the World and Bad and all that. I can do that. Can you do that with Breezy? You see, depends on what your standards are and what you condemn your standards to be. Well, it's not though. If only it was. If only it was. You can make a case for MC Hammer, James Brown. My honest thoughts about Prince and Beyonce that night. Prince was trying to create like a Ike Turner Tina thing. Prince was trying to cash in because that was the year to cash on musicology, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He was on his best behavior. He still said what he said about the industry, but he was doing it in a real cool way. But he was playing the game. Because remember, his news album came out and that thing went triple glad bag. Nobody was buying it except for diehard fans. You know, he still was running to these labels. He went to Sony, he got distribution. He came up with trying to slide the album part of the ticket sales. It was a smart move. It reeked of desperation, if you're my honest opinion. Him and Beyonce, it just felt like it was desperate for him to be cool and have the happening act, and that's what it felt like, you know. Um, you know, it just didn't really hit like that for me. I thought it was cute. He was trying to teach her some chords and some stuff, you know. And I think that, it's kind of how it was. To me, she looked a little overwhelmed. She did trying to channel team the best she could. She's more of a seasoned pro now. I mean, if you got somebody with that caliber on stage with her now, I think you'd have gotten, as a dancer, you can make the case, but beyond that, no. And even as a dancer, as great as he was, it was like almost treated like novelty because it's funny, his career ain't lasted that long. And I'm not just talking about him being a mid rapper, I'm talking about, it just didn't last where it was people would pay to go see him play, distinctive places. So when you say batter, you talking about the dancing. Okay, you can say that, but after that, he's below par compared to both of them. You know. But again, audiences today are different than they were back then. You know, they would have been they'd have ridden Chris Brown hard for his mid style. He don't blow up like that. And I don't think it's actually the thing with Rihanna that's why he's not getting the love. I just don't think the stuff is there. So he had this artist named Tamar who was worked with Beyonce. They part of Destiny Child, and the album never came out. He tried to show us some skills and some stuff. Um, well, it depends on what he was trying to do. You know, as a dancer, yes, I'm not gonna argue that about him, but that's all we talking about. But again, we're talking about a part of entertainment that carries some weight, but his career in comparison ain't gonna carry no weight. Yeah, well, again, he was trying to get some of that Beyonce money. It was cute on stage. Probably, I'd say him and Big Daddy Kane, because Big Daddy Kane could definitely go too. So yeah, you can say that. I'm not gonna argue with that. But I could make a case for LL Cool J too. Ooh. Probably off the top. Ah, God. There's a few that come to mind. I mean, um, Gregory Abbott, Shake You Down, because I thought there'd be more Orange Juice Jones, The Rain. Um, not thinking right now, but yeah, there's few coming to mind. Mainly the older ones, though. Not nobody that I saw in the last 15, 20 years, I would say. Because I didn't see nobody that I thought was going to be like, oh, that person was going to. She was pop. She could dance, though. She danced with the brothers, though. Italian girl danced with the brothers, but that wasn't. And that beat was all pop. Doom, doom, doom. Oh, Mickey, you're so fine. You're so fine. You blow my mind. Hey, Mickey. That was all pop. Prince was just funny, period. I could do a whole hour on Prince easily. He's very funny. Cap. The cat is one of the kings of cap. Because you took what he said with a grain of salt. He the same guy that was talking about real music, real artistry, and then he got on the MTV Video Music Awards in '99 and said, "My favorite band is TLC," and I hollered. He was the king of cap. He would contradict so much that you just, you know, talked in the third person, talking riddles. He made sense about the industry, but guess what? He was signed with every major label he could get his hands on. He was trying to put his records out, and he was, he made his money from touring, and he was smart, but he was also talking out the side too. You know, Eugene. Oh yeah, Gene Wow. Gotta take you home. He had another hit though. He was a two-hit wonder though. That was '83. when he had 2 hits. Not quite. Because he had them Jerry Curl hits. They came out within about 3 or 4 months of each other. They were 2 hits. But yeah. Me and Prince, it's a love thing. I'll say this. His 80s era is right there almost with anybody. It was great. Live performer, great. But the other stuff with him, very mid. I could take a lot to leave him. That's the real. Well, yeah, because he had a little bit of a run. But see, difference is back in the day, you didn't sit around have 30 years later. You didn't sit around 30 years later. You hit, and if you didn't come back with another hit, you was done. So you know, people are a lot more lenient now. These turkeys could be like Lil Nas X. They still trying to help put some budget on that turkey. It wasn't like that back in the day. Your behind could be gone with quickness. Yeah. Um. Well, Alexander New had quite a few hits. Saturday Love, Innocent. Come on now. He had quite fake. Come on now. Could have even had a bigger career though. I'll give you that. But he had hits. Brownstone was a pretty good choice because the nothing after the first album hit like the first. After the first album. Definitely like their voices. Yeah. I did like If You Still Love Me. But the problem with them is that they were gonna be like a second tier in Vogue. They could sing and they had nice harmonies and stuff, but there wasn't gonna be anything that, Michael Jackson did a song with them. There wasn't gonna be anything with them that was gonna be like, oh, they were gonna, be like a second cone of anything because they were kind of like boxed in. They were cool for what they did, and I liked their vocals all right. You know, it's just that, you know, about both of them. And decent vocalists and all that, but nothing that I would sit there and go, oh, if you SWV, you ain't losing no sleep. Okay. Second tier, I'd say a good group. Good. You could have said Mark Morrison because Return of the Mac was his only song he really had. You know. Yeah. Yeah, it's all that. Let me put this down real quick. See what I got real quick. Gregory Abbott, I already said his name. I said his name and I said Orange Juice Jones already. I already said those cats. And Gregory Abbott's sister Diana was the one that was married to Rob De Niro. Long story, small industry. Yep. See, you could have said Robin. You got to show me love because that's our only hit in '93. That was a big hit. So Billy Paul, and he had another hit. Not as big as Mrs. Jones, but he had another hit though. He wasn't a one hit wonder. A little run in the 70s, but that song was a Hallmark Hall of Fame card. Well, again, because the 90s was the start of the last of the industry as I know it. You had the boutique labels, you had people trying different styles, they were subgenre. We did wonder how people were gonna last. We did. Because we saw people having careers in the 90s. You do. Yeah, I did. I saw people having careers in the 90s, you know. People always wondering. It's that when hip hop took over, that's like that became and the thing about hip hop, very few rappers have had what I sustain long careers. Some of them are still around, but when you talk about sustain, that's a different ball game. She was big in the 70s and the 80s. Far from when Shame is her most known song. Michelle the hits though. So, gotta repeat that question again. But yeah, Evelyn was she still tours as a matter of fact. No, he wasn't. Skinny legs and all, and ain't too going to dance with a big fat woman. He had multiple hits. See, well, you're digging. She had another hit, "Fool's Paradise," "Do Me Baby." She had two or three hits. So we got um depends on what you're talking about. What's your idea? Who wasn't hitting? If you're talking about like Hanson, yeah. If you're talking about like Rome, yeah. If you're talking about Next, yeah. If you're talking about, it depends on who we're talking about. So for real was a one hit wonder. Candy Rain, I think they had another minor hit. I'd take that back. But my point is, um, what ended up happening is a lot of times what the technology took over too, and then it was like a handful of acts that were dominant. That's all. The men were dominant in R&B. R&B men was dominant at that point, and then it fell off after a while. It fell off where there's only like a few that was holding it down. So Shy had two hits, and I seen them recently on some show. They were doing something recently. They had another hit. All them groups back then had a couple of hits. It's just that let's just keep it 100. You weren't going to be high five. So if you couldn't be high five, who had hits, but you know what? You weren't going to be Boys to Men. You weren't going to be Jodeci. So you know. And then I guess you had to worry about Jagged Edge and 112. That's what the others. So there was tears to this world. So so yeah. I like I said, that was a one hit wonder, but that was a minor one hit. Again, it's about the songs you got. Like Blue Control, like take Blue Control for instance. She was Beyonce before Beyonce, but she She and Faith too. She was like rolled all into one. Didn't get a follow up for a lot of politics involved. There's a lot of factors. Anne Marie had a couple little runs, but industry, again, a lot of stuff has goes down. A lot goes down. A lot of these acts got to go through stuff. Things got to be right. You got to have the team behind you, the market behind you, the whole nine. Some people do come out. Little Mo was nice. She talked trash about Prince. She talked trash about Jay Z. So guess what? She got white ball. You know how it go. She was cool though. You talking about Olita Adams? She wasn't a one hit wonder. Or you talking about Brenda Russell, who was one of the baddest songwriters ever? She wasn't a one hit wonder. Both them women, it all depends on which one you're talking about. Much respect for both of them. Piano in the Dark, that's Brenda Russell. Shanice had R&B hits. I Love Your Smile was the main thing, but the pop, but she did have R&B hits. Should have been bigger had she had the right production team. But when you get, didn't I don't know. I don't know if it's her mom. I just think that she didn't get the right marketing. With the right situation, should have had a little bit of a Tony Braxton run in her with the right. Yep, Brenda Russell, dynamic songwriter. It's how good. Okay. Got some stuff going on real quick. Thank you. Thank you. We got a lot of likes on here tonight. I know in case people want to ask me the question, I will tell you right now. I will be back on Sunday. That is the plan. Sunday. Question mark for Monday, but definitely Sunday. So be on the lookout. Yeah, Centipede. Yeah, okay, you could say that. Should have had a couple hits though, but almost not quite. But you know what? We're getting right near September on Tuesday, and you can definitely tell the daylight savings thing then kicked in almost. You can definitely feel the vibe then changed. The weather's changed. It's definitely a little bit different than it was from a month ago. It feels like football season is coming. It feels like the leagues are coming. It feels a little bit different. So it's getting there. She got played more as a songwriter and as what I call an assist artist than as a legit number one option. Some of that's on her though. Yep. It's getting to that point. You can tell it's changing. Faith just didn't have he had a minor second hit. Minor. But let me tell you something about him. All the jokes and all the clowning you want to do, but that cat made that one song a gold mine. He owns the rights to it. So sniggle and laugh all you want. That cat made that thing count for a lifetime. And I ain't mad. Dances behind off too. Made that thing count. You know. So no lies about that. I'm not even but he did a heck of a flip business wise. No, but it was big on R&B though. it crossed over. It was a big crossover hit. He was a big act at one time. Corny as all get out, but it was huge though. Yeah. She didn't have to drive. She married into the business. She could. Her pen game was legit. She could sing. If you think about this, I'll say this to you. She was Mary J. Blige and Jennifer Lopez all rolled into one. The imagery, the vocals, but no catalog and no depth. And so, again, it ain't always about how talented you are. Vocally, she runs circles around Mary J's eyeballs. However, Mary delivered better. So, you know, talent gets you so far. Your heart, your drive, your determination takes you far. There's a difference. Some people get the two misconstrued. You gotta have the drive and the ambition. You gotta want it. A lot of these acts don't really want it. They want the fame, the fortune. They don't really want to put the work in. And you gotta put the work in. Faith knows her stuff around as far as the basics, and she can school you on that, but she didn't she basically married into the company and whatever. So I just don't think that it ever got to the next level. That's all. She's got, like I said, she's got some talent, but it ain't, could have been real dominant at Bad Boy. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. But that who you think what people gonna care about? They gonna care about the verses. They not gonna care about how good you sing. They gonna care about how you deliver. You saw the last verses with Joe and Donnell Jones. And Donnell Jones ain't no scrub. He's not as good as Joe, but he ain't no scrub. He's middle second tier. But Joe waxed him like rent was due. Like the collection plate was due. I mean, he waxed him. You don't get on there and get your behind waxed. Yeah, he got his behind ate up. Joe's tough, but he made Joe look like a heavyweight. You know, it's like, man, you should have stayed where you were. And I did like Donnell all right. What made me more embarrassed by Donnell Jones is that "Knocks Me Off My Feet" by Stevie Wonder. He said he would have never done it if he known it was Stevie's song. I'm like, you in the industry and you don't read credit notes? You don't read? I mean, that's more embarrassing than what happened on that stage, if you want my personal opinion. That's more embarrassing. That's more embarrassing what happened on the stage. Somebody he didn't know that "Knocks Me Off My Feet" was a Stevie song. Well, hold on, let me get this. Oh, that was more embarrassing. That was more embarrassing. You got that right. Look, and I like Donnell too, because he had this song, You Know That I Love You. I like that song back in '03. He had a little Stevie Mark, Michael Jackson thing going. I like this tone. You know what's up, you know. I like some of his stuff. But I know he wasn't gonna stand a chance against Joe. That I did know. And Joe is underappreciated. Joe's a good artist. You know. I've always said this. To me, Joe was always like a low tier version of R. Kelly. But that's not no diss because if I put you in that kind of category, that means that you scary, you know. And he can sing. But I'll tell you this though. Joe on that night, he looked like he could match R. Kelly's energy against Donnell Jones. Cause I mean, the band was tight. Come on now. Stop. Stop. You really don't want me to answer that question. Look, I know I like Eric Benet. He's entertaining. He got a nice voice tone. He couldn't carry D'Angelo's braids. Okay. Come on now. Yeah, I like Where I Want to Be. He has some songs I like, but he ain't touching Joe though. I don't know if you do that. Because he doesn't have one song. Darnell wins. Benet doesn't have the catalog. He's got talent, can sing, you know, but he ain't got the catalog though. He ain't got the catalog. He don't have the catalog. I like Eric too. I like watching his takes. He's a funny dude. He ain't got the catalog. He ain't beating Donnell. It's a battle. He's got some songs that can hang. He sure did. And I like Joe, but I take Donnell over music because music couldn't sing to me. He always sound like he drunk. He had a couple songs I like. He's kind of like that brother that you see at the learn how to say cappuccino, and he had a couple moments, but you know, Donnell got him beat. But look at who you comparing him with. Those are the like that's in that low second, high third tier. That's not the heavyweights. That's his section. Put Donnell up against music, Eric Benet, Miguel, Jay Holiday. You know what you mean? What's more popular? Oh, you asking me overall? R&B, because R&B is rock and roll. Rock and roll is an offshoot of R&B. And I know before you start telling me about loud guitars and all that, R&B was rock and roll. That's where they got it from. Yep. But I wouldn't waste. You wouldn't get me to waste more than 5 minutes watching that versus. That would be a boring butt versus because it's like watching paint dry. Neither one of them. You could combine Donnell and music, and you might get yourself a legit middle second tier act at best. 2.5. You're not getting a top act at their best combined. Got some moments, but nothing that I would go, oh, you know, nothing like that. Except to the fan base. Fan base might disagree with me, but feel free. I don't care. 5 tier means that you're below average. Like you suck below average. I'd say I don't want to. I don't want to go lower than a third because 5 tier means that you got like a lot of heavyweights. You don't. This ain't the '70s. Let's not get ridiculous. You know, if you're a third tier act today, maybe a fourth at most, that means that you're mid. And that's being kind. Cat can't even hold a microphone right. I never got his inflections of what he was doing as an artist. I thought he was just alright. It's corny. Like If you say someone is 5 tier, they need to be working at Jack in the Box. That's basically what you're saying. Cause that's not a compliment. That's a diss. He's not the worst R&B act. He's not the worst. Offshoots of each other. Offshoots of each other. Um, when people feel like they wrong, they want to say gospel, but country's always sold a lot of records. But it depends on what. Again, country sales are huge. So if you're going by popularity, but if you're going by what people would listen to more, it's even more gospel. But country's more popular. That's why the charts are now dominated by country acts. It's not by accident. Even though country music ain't nothing but an offshoot of R&B, and if you turn the twang part down and you put the cats in tune, it's R&B. That's all it is. It's just been manipulated. It's another thing that got stolen. You know, it's jacking the cracks, what we used to call it. It's whatever that garbage is. I don't eat that garbage, but you know, if you go by there, you know, they got a reputation. You know, they got a bad rep, not a good rap. I'm amazed how they stay in business, if I'm honest. Music had a couple of decent songs, but I never got the hype with him. He never was what I call a front street artist, you know. I know people who are fans of his, but ain't nobody ever said to me, "Oh, you know what? If I put up R. Kelly's name musically, Maxwell, D'Angelo, Brian McKnight, Joe, is he seeing any of them five? Was he seeing Tevin Campbell when Tevin was in his peak? Is he gonna see Usher? You know. So that's what I'm talking about. If I can roll off about, 7, 8 cats, where does he fit in that mix? He don't. That's before and then that's before we get to the Donnell Joneses. So that's all I'm saying. And it's a twisted thing to say this because music actually had about as much impact as a solo artist as Raphael Sadiq did. I know that might not be popular to say, but I'm gonna say it. Not in my aunt's house. I know what you saying, but not in my aunt's house. Mom ain't never forgot who she wanted to put on. I know what you mean. But not in my aunt's house. Mom loved Luther so much that thing was like mandatory. I know what you saying, but I know exactly what you mean. If you get one of them relatives' houses where they mix the Chevys Regal with the Coke and they accidentally put orange juice in there, then they might play somebody that's obscure. I get you. Like they like, baby, let me hear that Jaheim song again. My problem with Sadiq is this: I just don't think he got the vocal chops. Producer, arrangement, musicianship, I like him. As a solo artist, I don't. I liked him with Tone and Tone and Tone. I just never felt him as a solo artist. Ralph Tresvant in a blowout. Kidding. Ralph is the pro's pro. It's just that he never had the right material as a solo artist. As actually, if somebody like Sadiq got behind Ralph Tresvant, that could have been scary. That could have been a scary collab, right? What you saying? But give me RT all day, all night. Vocals, skill set. Cause Raphael didn't move me like that. Mm-mm. Ralph was also on that Michael prototype, just didn't get the right material. Could sing, could dance, perform, just didn't have the good sensitivity, and some of that other stuff was cute, but it was kind of hokey. Just never got the right songs. But yeah, he run Raphael Sadiq off of stage, as far as that go. But if they work together with like Sadiq was behind him on the production, oh, that could be some smoke. That could be some smoke right there. I might do that for a future thing. I'm not big on. I've been following Raphael Sadiq since he was playing with Prince and She Lee back 40 years ago. So, You're not talking to somebody who, yeah, no, just makes it up. I know what some people think, oh, well, no, I go back with him back then, but he just never really hit me as a solo artist. I liked him with Lucy Pearl, and I love Tony Tony. They actually were starting to get good when he left, but I just don't like his solo career. Yeah, you know what? If he just had one of them kind of Bill Withers type of songs that actually hit, he could been something. He he's an odd cat because he did have a song that was but he's always like he's working on his car and he's down on his luck and he's got his last $3 and he's been buying a 6 pack and he's wearing his trucker cap and he just all frustrated and his hands are all brown and dark and he just all mad and groggly. And that routine worked. Good voice, and I do like him, but it's like somebody impersonating somebody that's a tier below to two. Only look, man, go get a Bill Withers record or a James Ingram record and put that whiskey voice to good use, and then you might be on to something. If you get someone who can put your whiskey vocals the right way, you could be scary. Still, so I know you could see him in one of them. Anthony Mackie moves. Anthony Mackie's getting, down on his luck, and they got Anthony Hamilton song in the background. I know. These artists get played, and they pretty much play right into typecast. That's all. So sometimes you can just almost write the script. It's funny how that works. Yeah, he got some songs that I like. And he actually had a song. I forgot what group it was, but Charlene, and then always like my rent is due, and I'm in this thing, and people don't want me to hear me to say this, but man, he had somebody like R. Kelly writing him a songs on that grind. Could been something, you know. But what he puts out, I mean, yeah, you know. I know somebody gonna ask me about the dream. He was mid to me. Uh, some of these cats, I listen to them and I just think they okay, but they ain't knocking me out. Mm. And I think that's what you're hoping for, something to come knock you out. Okay. So we got. He was, and I don't know why. I know he did background for D'Angelo, okay, and he had some other gig he did, and he, like I said, got decent voice and everything. But he's one of those acts. He's kind of like a male version of Fantasia. I'm like, okay, just give me that song, hit it right. Let me give you. Let me. If you ever heard of the singer Lattimore who died this week, just straighten it out. Give me a one if you ever heard Lattimore. Let Anthony Hamilton do a song like just straighten it out. Let's straighten it out. Let him do a song where he puts his foot in or a show and tell. See, I know exactly the kind of song that could, or let him tackle one of them Teddy Pendergrass's little TKOs. That's the kind of songs he needs. So you can give me a show and tell, you get me, let's straighten it out, give me a little TKO, hit me with one of them whiskey songs. Or Just Once by James Ingram. Get back to me. Or get in the studio and get one of them Commodore Zoom songs. I wouldn't do nothing for me. I look at them crazy. I was like, don't be playing that. I don't want to hear that. I want to hear a song where I can feel the emotion. Not, it's cool, but it don't hit me like that though. His voice don't hit me like that. Yeah, well, because Teddy also had the songs that connected. That's how you do it when your voice is actually in tune and it's got some feeling to the song. Not that, you know, like I said before, cats need to step up their pen game, that's all. The dream to me was like a knock on a little bit of Michael Prince and R. Kelly rolled into one. And he tried that kind of like lightweight formula. People be up there swearing up and down that he was on something profound because he wrote some catchy songs, but I never really thought much of him. Thought he was decent for his time, and he kind of came when he was played. Because if you want to do a versus, put the Dream up against T Pain. Who do you think would win? I alluded to that. That's kind of coming out of the blue that you mentioned that. That's where he was going with that. Yes, I have. That's what he wanted to. I said he was channeling, he had a song channeling Michael, channeling R. Kelly. I don't think society ostracizes them. I think that society is embracing it because they take on the personalities a lot more than they imagine. They already know. They don't ostracize nobody that seems to be. Um, they don't in the sense that. Yep. They don't ostracize them in the sense that they are aware of them than what they used to be. They ostracize them that they try to cage them up and act like they're not part of reality. But there's a lot more people in that fit that description. It's a very dangerous, manipulative thing that goes on. Yeah, I like T Pain better, but that's what I'm saying. When you start lowering your bar, it has to be because society's changed where there are more conditions. Well, again, I'm gonna tell you something about that. He had to sound like that because that's what the record companies wanted. These things don't happen by accident. You remember Seven Aquarius? He used to produce all that stuff for Murder Inc. He was a big Prince head, and he played all those synth pop grooves and all that stuff. He played. That's what the industry wanted. They get people to sound like what they want. You got to go to a board meeting. It's not like, oh, because you play this, that no, they play what you want them to play. They make people sound like people all the time. It has been a clone factory forever in a day. When I was younger, I thought, the clones and sound alike. That's what the industry wants. The reality is there's a lot of talented people in the business. It's a matter of, can you play the game? Because people come out sounding like one person and then they end up sounding like somebody else, and then they go on and go on and on and on and on. And that is how you get your foot through the door. Now, how do you use it afterwards? That's on you. So he had to sound like that to get his foot in the door, and they were embracing that. That's what they wanted. That was done on purpose. They do this every 20-year thing. TV does that all the time. Like that 70s show was like supposed to be like, it came out in the 90s, and then Happy Days was the 50s. That's just part of what they do. I made that discovery and correlation a long time ago. And they do the same thing in music. You're going to hear people say, oh, we're having a revival of this era because that's what the industry wants. They want people to sound like something that, they do that that's just what they do. The 90s was to sound like the 70s, you know. It's a bad thing because you can try to emulate something, and that's cool. You should aspire for something great. However, if you don't strive to take the compartments of that and make it your own, you're just basically a puppet. You become what? What one of the biggest shows the last 25 years is what? American Idol. And they get you to look and sound like somebody. They tell you they want originality. Clay Aiken came out, he was supposed to be Barry Manilow. Ruben Studdard come out, he was supposed to be Luther Vandross. Jennifer Hudson was supposed to come out, supposed to be like a nod to Whitney Houston and to others. I mean, Carrie Underwood comes out. They have this done on purpose. You know, it's not by accident. You can sit there and listen, and if you got good ears and you remember, you're like, oh, that's what people are. No, I like Life All Right. I was trying to think of him earlier. No, I mean I respect him. Uh, you go back before that though. You gotta remember, I've been watching. I watched Apollo back in the day, and he good for his era. But when you say top five performances, you got to talk about 60s, 70s, 80s. There were some people that would run his vocals out around the block. He was good, for what he did. She was good, but she never had a Stephanie Mills thing, which is what I keep was hoping that she would eventually come to, and she never did. She never reached that Stephanie thing. Good though. What I learned from him, I just think that he disciplined. He disciplines himself to just kind of stay where he's at. Um, yeah, enlighten yourself. You educate yourself every day. He obviously, you're not dealing with someone who just you're not dealing with someone who just didn't study a lot of different things. You have to be well read and well versed. And he made himself into a scholar. Yeah. What about American Idol? That just goes to show that reading is important. Did it make it? It made it worse because it falsified the industry. And if you notice, Idol, a lot of the acts that come on there aren't as big. The auditions funny bit is more bigger. It made them bigger than the artist. So it gives you a false sense about how the industry really works. The industry don't work quite like they do. It was cute, cute. The stuff he puts out ain't the half of his real talent. Okay. You go through the bother to give a great performance in Ray Charles, and you'll come out with some of them records you come out with. They're cute. But the thing about it is this: some people think he's the most talented artist going today, and some people are still waiting on him to actually come up with something that they can define and say he's good at. What is he good at? I think his enlightenment as educating is more impactful. I don't know if I'd say that he's, I mean, he has spoken the word, but I don't know, again, actions and situations is a little bit different, you know. It depends on which one we're talking about, where he's coming from. Depends, you know. Impactful, yeah, no doubt about it. But I don't agree with everything. No, most people don't. So I'm gonna get ready to go in a couple minutes because I've been almost, yeah, I'm pushing about 4 more minutes. 4 more minutes. He cashed in, but what did he cash into? I don't think he's made anything after Ray that matches the half of Ray. I bought Ray on digital. I'll watch Ray in a New York minute. I won't waste my time with most of the stuff he puts out. He can play, but he just always comes off like a parody of other people, and he lost some of that edge he had. I remember I used to listen to the Foxhole back in the day. That was hilarious. But that was funny. Him as a comedian, I can take or leave most of the time. But when he did the Foxhole, I cracked up. That was my joint back then. But I just don't think the industry want to put no money in him like that because he's a different era. I think that had a lot to do with the situation too. You gotta remember, we're not in the era where people are pushing artistry. I know somebody will throw Bruno Mars in me who does quite well, but remember, Bruno has to work with Cardi B's and different people. You're not in the industry where people are just making their music like that, and that's it primarily. And you're not in the era where we really are debating artists like that no more. We don't. We don't. You give yourself a big time performance, and then what happens next. So, he had paid his dues though, and he had definitely showed a claim, and his acting came up, his acting chops, and he could play and sing. But, you know, do I think that, like I like to always say, and Prince said it in I seen the top, and it's just a dream. It is. Because if you don't have other things going on, you tend to he did the Django. Some people like the Django, you know. But, you know, all depends on where you come down with him though. He's gonna be a Hall of Famer. That's up now. He's already got a league MVP, so he's already a Hall of Famer. He's been to two AFC Championship games. He's already a Hall of Famer. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. I don't know why that would be a discussion. Now, if you ask me about Justin Herbert, okay. Mm, if you ask me about Brock Purdy, mm, Josh Allen's going to be a Hall of Famer. He's already there. And who are those two quarterbacks? Do tell me. Because I'm gonna tell you something. If you're a league MVP, you're gonna get in. I've already told you Malcolm is more influential because Farrakhan is still eating off the table that Malcolm prepared the meal. Farrakhan is not okay. And Moon because the racial aspect and they took a long time. Fouts had crazy numbers. But neither one of them were league MVPs. Of course, Lamar's in. You got two league MVPs. You got to give me names that I would say they're questionable. I already told you that Justin Herbert is questionable. They're going to try to make Jalen Hurts questionable, which is stupid, but he doesn't have the same fanfare. See, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson got fanfare. Joe Burrow's got fanfare. Okay? They sell jerseys, they got popular. Malcolm is Malcolm. It's not, Farrakhan, Miriam March, impactful, but it ain't a threat like Malcolm was. To this day, I'm talking about almost 60 years after the man has been alive. To this day, you could say Malcolm X's name in some circles and you'll get some pushback, some resistance. It's just different. They may have taught him, but they can't show you how to be iconic. They don't have the charisma. Okay? That's like what Prince Charles and Queen Elizabeth brought Lady Diana aboard. She surpassed them. Think about what I just said. I said surpass. See, someone can bring you, but then you can surpass them. Think about Digital Underground. They brought Tupac up. He surpassed them. No, it's a different situation because Eli was never great during the regular season, and he had great postseason. He beat New England, but there's doubts about him because he is a very mid quarterback. There's the difference, and plus, Josh Allen did not have the defense, did not have the depth. It's a different situation. It's not the same. But Josh Allen got league MVP. He was a better regular season quarterback than Eli Manning. There's a big difference. And plus, if you put Eli Manning up against his peers, he doesn't even register the same as Ben Roethlisberger. He doesn't get the love as Drew Brees, and he's not seen as his brother or Brady. So, or Aaron Rodgers. Whereas Josh Allen, you put him with Lamar, Mahomes, Burrows, you ain't got no problem with that. Case closed. I'm dropping the mic on that one. She was a mid talent. If R. Kelly don't mess up the situation and just work with her, she could have been like a Jennifer era musically. But I think she would have been bigger on film. She definitely had a certain aura about her. But I thought she was incomplete. I thought that, it was a lot of we don't never know, but there was a lot of people that were definitely trying to get at her, passed her around. You could kind of say that if you want to, you know. You could say that. And you wouldn't be too far off. I mean, you get somebody that comes along and actually you know, gets to the gist of what you're doing. Some people say that about Dr. J to Michael Jordan, so it all depends on how you look at it. Not really. Not to me, it's not. Film wise, yes, not music wise. I don't think there's anything she could have done musically except learn how to actually get, tone. I just don't think there was much gonna happen musically. But movie wise, yeah. Yeah. Okay, name them six and I'll tell you. Name them six. Name them six. I wouldn't say that. He's more disciplined than Prince was. Prince was kind of like, actually, Prince would be more like Khalid Muhammad. I'd say Farrakhan is more like Stevie Wonder. And I say Khalid Muhammad was more like the Prince because kind of chaotic and kind of out there. When you hear people age ain't number the number and back and forth is still a bop to this day. They gave her a beat song. They gave her something that was catchy, but they couldn't add nothing to her as an artist. Kales could do that. Could have been like her Jam and Lewis to her Janet Jackson. Could have been. Should have been. If other factors don't get in the way, because that was straight. Okay, let me break all those cats down real quick. Rich Gannon was a fluke. He did get MVP, but it was kind of like, you know, good at best. Theismann had a good streak where he got really good, but the team was, well, the problem is Joe Gibbs ended up winning Super Bowls with him, Doug Williams, and Ripken. So that hurts him. Cleveland never got out to a Super Bowl. Brian Sight was good, never was elite. Kenny Anderson did get league MVP, but Cincinnati didn't win that Super Bowl. I think that hurt them. Same thing with Boomer Esiason. They really pushed Esiason, and he fell off after he left there. Steve McNair is probably your best one out of all those. You know, had he won the Super Bowl, and precursor to Don McNabb and his strength, But again, uh, those guys are not what I consider top tier quarterbacks, though. They're not first tier quarterbacks. I like McNair a lot, and I saw Theismann play, and I like Sipe. Wisconsin had an out of body. Rich Gannon really had an out of body. Ken Anderson was good for his time. None of those guys are first tier, though. There is no versus. They're the same. They're one and the same coin flip. They both were talks basically the same thing, and they both got took out for the same thing. So, you know, I like the songs okay, but I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that they were great songs. I mean, they were cool for their time. Dr. King is gonna win because if I had to pick, Dr. King wins because look at what he sacrificed. You know, but they both dynamic guys. I don't like picking one against the other, but if I had to, okay, you got Dr. King because look at what he sacrificed. I mean, he took on the whole United States. If that ain't radical, I don't know what he is. But and they name every street after him. He's as important as any president who's come at the White House. You can't go nowhere in a black neighborhood and not have a King Street Boulevard. So I don't know how you get more gangster than him. You know, Malcolm was a heck of an orator, dynamic soul, and impactful. Yeah, they changed her up, and she basically became a producer's pet. Well, it was kind of like, well, at least with R. Kelly, they were working in unison together, but that's kind of how it went. But again, they used her as kind of like secondary. I'm not gonna argue with what you're saying, but let me just say it like this: except for Steve McNair, who was dynamic out those guys, Brian Sipe never really got past. They all them guys had one thing in common: they all came up short and had winnable Super Bowls. Funny you mention that. Do you want me to go by the list? Except for Esiason had a chance, couldn't seal the deal. Gannon got tore up in the Super Bowl. He looked embarrassed. Brian Sipe choked against the Raiders AFC Championship. That you remember. The Heisman did win and what have you, but really, again, because of what happened in Washington, he's canceled because Joe Gibbs won with two other quarterbacks and went to Super Bowls with two other quarterbacks with and without him. So how good was he really? That hurts his case. You know, McNair was tough. You know, and we can debate about that. I just think Josh Allen coming around at a time where he'll benefit more. I'm huge on Malcolm. I'll raise you, Jim Plunkett. I'm gonna raise you, Randall Cunningham, and I'm gonna raise you right in front of your eyes, Jalen Hurts. Oh, you gotta put him with any female artist. It's just that Whitney would have been like, I think, a heck of a match. They did do. I don't know if you've seen a rehearsal for One Day in Your Life. They did that they did that together on stage during his 30th anniversary. That's a few little segments of it. Yeah, but he got a league MVP. And he's playing in an era with one of the three greatest quarterbacks ever and top five in Patrick Mahomes. That those guys have to go through that situation. That's the question. No, they did not. That's what Josh Allen's got going for him. Malcolm, I am. Farrakhan, I love to hear him orate, and he's very knowledgeable, well spoken. There's things I don't, things I do. Umar is one of those guys that I like him as a content creator. I just don't buy him that deep beyond that. I think he's good as a content creator because I think that if Kevin Samuels was alive and he went to some of the stuff Umar Johnson did, he would leave him in the dust because he's more matter of fact. Umar has some points, but I look at him more as content creating than I do as like an orator on that level. I don't feel it like that. I'm not gonna argue with you about him because the longer he plays, it looks not too good. And had he retired after the whole thing with Green Bay about 5 years ago, yeah, it would have failed him anytime. I mean, but it's just that, you know, I'm just all I say with Josh Allen is that he's one of those. It's gonna be tough for you to take this, and it can be tough for me to take it. Sometimes you come on at the right time. Your timing is everything. In another era, you probably don't. And he did to an extent, but then he ain't really, cashed it all the way out. But then again, there was a guy named Patrick Mahomes who's gotten away. Guys camped out in the Super Bowl 5 times. So no, she wasn't allowed to because Clyde Davis didn't want it. Politics got in the way, my friend. And they wanted to feed Whitney Machine because she was coming up on her second album. They didn't want to feed the Michael Jackson machine. They wanted Whitney to. That's when I'm dancing with somebody and all that. They didn't want to feed the machine. There was a time that could have probably have worked. They didn't want them to working together. Powers that be. It worked out all right with Sierra Garrett though. I think the unknown worked out better for him. He wanted a superstar collab because that's how he did it before. He ain't beat him when it counted. Where's his rings at? Did you just hear what I just said? One man been to 5 Super Bowls, camps out in January. The other guy's been to one Super Bowl and been knocked out by the 10th game of the season, looking like Luka Doncic of quarterbacks. It's no contest. Beat him and where? One guy got 3 rings, 3 Super Bowl MVPs, two-time league MVP. How beat him in what? In what? In what universe? Yeah, I already said it about Whitney. I like Burrow, but come on now. You up here making Joe Burrow is Sergio Garcia to Patrick Mahomes, Tiger Woods. And if you don't know what I mean, look it up. Remember when Sergio Garcia back in '99 had that little out of body match, and it took him what 20 years to win his first major? Get out of town with that one. He ain't on seeing no Mahomes. He did, and then Mahomes came back and beat him. But look at the track record. Look at the record. 3-2 in the Super Bowl. Burrow's 0-1. Who looks more superior? Who has dominated their era? Burrow's on his last legs because if they don't do something now, they're gonna have to dismantle that situation. So no, it's not even up for discussion for me. I mean, I'm just saying, you know, it makes no difference. It took him 20 years to get a first major. He had a little bit of an outer body in '99, and he didn't hear nothing from him for almost 20 years. That's the point I'm trying to say. That's what Joe Burrow is. Joe Burrow is to Sergio Garcia as Tiger Woods is to Patrick Mahomes. That's my point. Because we talking about potential and someone who could be a top five in the mix. He never could touch the dude. And I know what you're trying to say, but he didn't win the Super Bowl. And it was a winnable Super Bowl and he didn't win. No, but she had enough screen presence to be an actress. She could have definitely been on the big screen. I think she had something there. I think it was going to last longer than the music was. He did, but neither one of them is seeing Patrick Mahomes. But they play in an era where you always got that one dominant guy. I know what that means, but again, league MVP. He's considered the best quarterback going right now. Been to two AFC Championship games. He's got the pulse of the media right now. In case you're not paying attention, he's the pulse right now. If he don't cash in, that's on him. But they already got his gold jacket fitted. I'm just trying to tell you what I see. You're entitled to say what you want, but I'm telling you what I see. They already got him draped up for what they want. I'm just telling you like what I see. And I'm not saying you wrong. I'm just telling you what I see. You know, it's already where they're done with Lamar almost. Not to me, he's not, because he ain't won nothing. I'm not gonna say no mess like that. Mahomes then made history. Mahomes is with Montana and Brady. That's what he's chasing. Josh Allen is trying to get in there. He's trying to get in the club. You got a guy that you can make a case as top five all time, top three. Josh Allen is like 15-20 section. He got a ways to go before he would enter the chat. And something tells me if he don't get one, he'll never enter the chat. But he'll get a blaze though. He'll get a coat because he got stats. The reason why I say he'll get in is because not only he's got leading MVP, but he's got the rushing yards. He's been a one man team. He's got that Russell Westbrook thing going, which people like. That's all. So that's all I'm saying. Yeah. Yeah, well, that goes with most people if you get the right this and right that, but it's just a matter of, the right budget and what they're going to do with you, but what they're going to put you at, you know. And I don't know. I don't know. But I think she had a chance on the big screen. They want him in, they'll get him in. They wanted him to be like the broke Brett Favre, he'll get in. I don't think he should get in, but, except he had better success. Philip had more talent. That's why I keep going back to you on this. I don't think you look at it. Phil Rivers had LaDainian Tomlinson, and he had some top tier guys. He just didn't get the job done. And he would beat legit teams and lose to scrub teams. Josh Allen ain't never have that kind of a running back or tight end. Well, yeah, that's on that level. That's the Josh Allen excuse, if you will. And you might be right about what you're going at it with, but I can also counter it. He ain't have the talent that Rivers had with him. You only and very few guys can just go and be bad with mid cats. That's all I'm saying. So you know. So well, Ashanti had a different combo when she came on because she was a writer. And then she had those hooks and hooks songs with Ja Rule, so that was a little bit different. Sierra, yeah. But it didn't last for long, did it? But he's a knucklehead and he's a broke Antonio Brown. And the only reason why they tolerate him because he's athletic and can put some stuff up. But he tends to be his own worst enemy and he ends up hurting his own cause. So that's why he's gonna end up gonna be a mascot for half the NFL. He's his own worst enemy. If only he could get out of his own shadow. you know, because his personal life is more bigger than his actual football career. And most people, no, she sucks, but she can dance. She's like a female version of Chris Brown, you know. And I remember when she worked with Jazzy Faye and all that. Cute act. Russell Wilson is the best hit song she's had, and yeah, that's her best hit because no, we weren't feeling her musically. Okay, I'm gonna get ready to roll because I've been over 2 hours. I appreciate everybody coming through. It's been very lively tonight. Thank you so much. I will be back on Sunday, so look for me early in between. No, I'll be back around this time Sunday. If I'm back on Sunday, it's about the same time I came on. So if you're on, feel free to come through. Dakota, we really had a great chat tonight. Appreciate you. That's some good one-on-ones. Blaster, thank you. He's in there. He's in there. He's in there. But it's a shame too because those commercials he did in Seattle were horrible. I mean, that mess. I don't know who was more stiffer in the local market, him or Anthony Davis. I saw them Anthony Davis commercials in LA. Them joints was brutal. But you know, he's borderline Hall of Fame, so we'll see. We'll talk about that the next time about Russell Wilson. I think he gets in, but I think they're gonna make him wait because he stayed around about 2 or 3 years too long. And it didn't look good how his career ended with Pittsburgh and also Denver. So we'll talk about it. All right, stay safe, stay blessed, stay woke, stay free. Appreciate everybody that came through. Have a great night. Stay strong. We'll talk soon. Peace.